Good morning. Good morning to everybody who's here. You made it, and those who are online. It's great to have people from all over the country, all over the world, even online with us this morning. And I know our dear minister Nicole Kirk is online with folks on Zoom. So welcome to you as well. Thank you for doing that. We have some special guests. This being Native American History Month, we wanted to make today's services. We've been holding up Native American traditions and things throughout the month, but today, a very special day where we've got some special guests with us. We have back with us this year Michael Lohman from the Choctaw tribe, who will play music for us and has a special dance for us as well later in the service. And then my good friend Eli Grayson is with us. Eli is part of the Muskogee Creek tribe. He was inducted into the Muskogee National Hall of Fame not that long ago for his work on behalf of the tribe in California, where he lived until a few years ago when he moved back here. He also has a radio program. You may have heard him on KBOB, 89.9 FM at 1 p.m. on Tuesdays. It's African and Indian Table Talk. And it's a fantastic program. I recommend it to you. He's been an advocate for the rights of the freedmen descendants of the Indian Territory. The freedmen are people who are of African descent, who were enslaved by the 5 civilized tribes, and the descendants have regained their rights of citizenship only in the Cherokee and Seminole tribes so far, but he's still working to advocate for the repatriation of all of the descendants of the freedmen into their tribes. So this morning, let us, before we light our chalice, I would like to, and speak our covenant, I'd like to read our land acknowledgement here about the land that we're on. Oklahoma, which was formerly known as Indian Territory, is home to 39 federally recognized Native American tribes. The city of Tulsa is within the tribal boundaries of 3 of these federally recognized tribes: the Cherokee Nation, the Muskogee Creek Nation, and the Osage Nation. And All Souls Unitarian Church, where we are right now, is located within the Muskogee Creek Nation Reservation. And so we acknowledge that and honor that history and the location in which we are. With that, I'd like to invite you to say All Souls Covenant, which is printed in your program. And for those who don't know what a covenant is because we don't have a belief system or dogma or doctrine that joins us together, because there are many beliefs, people with different beliefs. We have humanists and agnostics and people across the religious spectrum, seekers of all kinds, people who really have been exploring and putting together different beliefs and inspiration from wherever they can find it. What joins us together is not a creed or a belief, but it is a promise that we make to each other every week in this community, and that is our covenant, and it's printed here, and it begins with the word love, and I invite you to say it with me. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. And those, if there are any guests who are with us this morning, if you would, we have a gift for you, and I see Eric's coming down the aisle here, and if you raise your hand, he'll bring you a gift. He's just right there on the side. If you just raise your hand, he'll come give you a gift as Randy invites our chalice lighters forward.
Thank you. Our chalice is lit today by longtime members Bill Wamigo and Carol Hinckley. Now, Bill, a Marine veteran, is from the Potawatomi tribe, and Carol is from the Cherokee tribe, and we welcome Bill and Carol.
Let the flame of our chalice remind us of the words of the poem, Weaving the Circle. We gather as one, a circle of hands, each thread of life woven across the lands. Our voices rise like the winds through the pines, sharing stories, memories, and sacred signs. The elders guide with wisdom like the stream, Young hearts learn in the light of the dream. We dance with the earth, our spirits entwined. In this circle of love, our unity we find.
I have a story for you today by Ashley Fairbanks, illustrated by Bridget George. It's called This Land. This is my house. I live here with my family. Before us, another family lived here. And before that, another family lived here too, and another, and another. And before our house was here, there was another family with a different kind of house. There was a whole village full of families laughing and cooking and playing. There were even annoying little brothers and sisters. But when people came here from Europe, they forced most of those families to leave their homes. And all across the country, Native Americans had to leave everything they knew and move into small pieces of land called reservations. This land that we're on right now is one of those reservations. But despite everything done to them, many Native American people still live here today. Like my friend TJ, he's an Anishinaabe, and he lives with his grandma. TJ's grandma, Noko, taught me that before my ancestors arrived, this land was filled with indigenous people from coast to coast. I wonder if all of them made food as good as she does. Noko taught us a song to help us remember that indigenous people have always been here, and they're still here wherever we go. This song goes like this. This land is sacred, this land is living, from the Black Hills to Pueblo Canyon, from the swampy bayous to the salmon swimming. This land all has a history. Now, whenever my family goes somewhere, I ask, who lived here before the people who live here now? At the Grand Canyon, I learned that there are tons of tribes who call it home. The Havuspai, the Yavuspai, the Paiute, the Hopi, the Zuni, the Apache, the Dene. And their relatives have lived here longer than anyone can remember, even the really old people. And at the Golden Gate Bridge, I learned that the Ohlone have been fishing here for thousands of years. In New York City, I learned that the Lenape were here long before all the skyscrapers. Everywhere we go, there are indigenous people to learn from. So I keep singing. This land is sacred. This land is living. This land all has a history, even my backyard. I invite our children and youth to come learn about our history and our backyard.
Yes. In moments of joy and in times of sorrow, we are reminded of the interconnectedness of all things. Let us cherish and support each other, knowing that our shared burdens become lighter and our shared joys brighter within our circles of care and compassion. Today we offer condolences to Joan Williams Hoare and family on the loss of her husband, Larry Hoare, who passed away on Friday, November 8th. We extend our heartfelt sympathies to Nathan Watchsmuth and family on the loss of his mother, Shelley Olson, who died suddenly last week. We hold space for member Nicole Peltier, whose mother also passed away last week. Condolences to member Larry Gray, whose mother Bernice passed away yesterday. And we hold space for member Diane Ainsworth, who passed away last week. And we hold space for Josh Knutson, whose memorial tomorrow will be in this sanctuary at 1 p.m. Josh grew up in this church and was also on staff, and so we're holding his family in our thoughts. So may we each find the strength we need in the hour that it is needed the most. And as we enter into a brief moment of silence, let us continue to hold each other in our thoughts and intentions.
So I just so appreciate the music and just the spirit in which you're able to create with that flute and your music and composition. So thank you for being with us. So one of the things that I think is really important about what we do in this sanctuary, in this community, is this idea of seeking the truth in love. And one of the things I wanted Eli Grayson, who's with us today from the Muskogee Creek tribe, to help us understand is, what does it mean to be a part of the Muskogee Creek tribe and nation? Particularly, I'm thinking there's so many ways in which we fantasize and fetishize the native peoples of this land, and we kind of can have this idea that, I mean, when I see Michael Lohman later today in Walmart, he's not going to be dressed in ceremonial regalia. But there's sometimes people have this idea, that, oh, that's what a Native American looks like. You don't look like a Native American because you're not you don't have feathers coming out of your headdress.
You look like my brother.
What's that?
You look like my brother.
That's right. I know. So I want to talk about that. What does it mean to be a part of the Muskogee Nation? What is the Muskogee Nation? I mean, you talked in the earlier service just about the incredible pluralism and of different peoples and religions that exist within the nation. So what is that? Is it an ethnicity? Is it a political nationhood? What is it all? Or maybe it's all of that.
It's all of that. Is when you see the word nation, the United States is a nation. The tribes are nation. They are sovereign nations that have an acknowledgement with the federal government. We call it federal recognition. And tribes are political societies. And I'm going to specifically talk about these tribes, and my tribe in particular, the Creek Nation, is a political society. It has different religions in it. Some people don't believe in anything. Some people are Catholic, some are Baptist, some are Muslim. Yeah. Some people are living in foreign countries, like we have Creek citizens living in Germany. We have Creek citizens living in Japan. But it's a political status, if you can understand that. And then within the nation itself, which is a nation of people, there's a constitution. They're usually not all tribes have treaties with the U.S., but they're usually treaties. We have a number of treaties with the United States, the last one being on June 14, 1866. But within that, we have a constitution, which is the foundation of our laws, that allowed us to self-govern ourselves, basically. And within our tribal government, we are a three-branch government. We have an executive branch, which is the chief, the second chief and his cabinet, just like the U.S. We have a legislative branch, which we call our National Council. Back in the day, before statehood, it comprised of two bodies then, the House of Warriors and the House of Kings, which is like your Senate and House of Representatives. And then we have the judicial branch, which consists of our district court and our Supreme Court. And so when you want to understand tribes and get it out of the context of the stereotype and really understand why it's important, if you live in Tulsa, or in eastern Oklahoma particularly, you're living in reservation tribes. And what does that mean? How does that affect your life? It actually does, whether you know it or not. So, how many of you guys know that the Creek Nation owns the Arkansas River? When it hits the Creek Nation and when it leads and goes into the Cherokee Nation, it's owned by the Cherokees. And then it goes south, I think, into the Choctaw Nation before it goes into Arkansas. We never treated away or act of Congress passed anything that relinquished our title to those rivers. And the Arkansas, so whenever there's something happening on the Arkansas River, like the bridge that went across, the walking bridge or the gathering place, on, behind the scenes was an agreement between the Creek National Council and your Tulsa leadership that no one knew about. Those are the unspoken things of how we live together, what we actually do, and I know for a lot of older people who grew up here, you never heard the word reservation when it came to eastern Oklahoma or the 5 tribes. The Osage put that out for themselves. But for the 5 tribes, you never heard of reservation status. We used to say boundaries, domains, stuff like that, until a ruling by the Supreme Court a few years back called McGirt, and then the Supreme Court confirmed the Creek Nation never gave away its reservation. It still has legal jurisdiction over its people, and that is a treaty issue found in Article 3 of the 1866 treaty. So understand, we're more than sometimes what we think of Indians are. And that if you're not starting with a political society, you're missing it. And the people that are citizens of the tribe, if you're a certain age, you can actually vote for the chief, vote for the council members, you can participate in amending the Constitution or adding things to your national council laws, all of that. So it's a very complex type of government and society that hosts, like the U.S., different religions, different races of people. We had a chief back in the day, right before statehood. He died in 1902 accidentally by flipping his wagon, and the wheel went over his neck and broke it. His name was Spahitcher. Spahitcher is what a lot of Creeks say. And he was chief during that time, too, and he made a comment, he made a quote to an Indian agent that's kind of stuck in writing for a lot of us people, Native people who see it. And it basically say, no matter if you're white, black, or red, members of this nation, he's talking about the Creek Nation, you have equal consideration, meaning you're the same. There's no one person better than the next person. There's no one out Indian anybody here. We're all equal under the law. And one of my goals, and I have a radio show, African and Indians Table Talk, and we basically talk about civics with the chiefs and council members that dare to sit across the table from me. We talk about civics and why it's important, if you are a tribal member, why you should feel you have a right to be a tribal member. And if you're not a tribal member and you're living within the Creek Nation or the Cherokee Nation, you need to understand what those laws are, what those people are, why there's a different type of set of rules for me than you if you're a non-tribal member. The word Indian itself is a political word. The Supreme Court actually defined it under Martin versus Menkari, I think in 1971. There was a white guy in the BIA that basically sued Bureau of Indian Affairs that he wasn't being promoted, and red people, Indian people, were being promoted over him. And they went all the way to the Supreme Court, and he was originally claiming they're being promoted based on their race. And the court came back and said, no, Indians are not a race, they're political status. And they're being promoted because they're Cherokee, or they're Hopi, or they're Dene, or they're whatever, but not because of their race. They're being promoted because of their political status with the U.S. government. And so the court from then on, and Congress, moved out of the racial status. It took a while, but a political status. I asked you this question. How many of you guys in here are members of a tribe? Yeah. So I know these brothers are. So what tribe are you? Cherokee. So you're Cherokee National. The interesting thing, we talked about this earlier, in 1878 and followed by another hearing in 1882, it was called Conditions of Indians in Indian Territory, where the U.S. Senators, a group of them on the Indian Affairs Committee, came to Fort Gibson and interviewed tribal members, whether they were freedmen descendants or by-blood members or chiefs, whatever they did, light horsemen, interviewed them basically about statehood. This is way back before we start talking about statehood. They were trying to get the temperature if the tribal members wanted statehood. And most of them say, go away, we don't want your statehood. We're fine being Creek, we're fine being Cherokee. But what they would start out with, what is your nationality? That was the question given to them, what is your nationality? And the person that they were interviewing, whether they were Choctaw, Seminole, whatever, always said, I'm a Seminole, that's my nationality. Or I'm a Creek, that's my nationality. You know, so we got to understand now we're 100 years out of that, over 150 years now, and we somehow have gotten caught up back into blood quantums and divisions and Baptists and Pentecostal and traditional Creeks and non-traditional Creeks, and we always do this divide. But politically, we're the same, like being an American. I'm an American citizen. Did you know this? This is a tidbit. That as a citizen of one of the 5 tribes, my citizenship as an American didn't come through the 14th Amendment or any of the U.S. Constitution stuff where your citizenship is based on your birthright as American, found in the Constitution, all of this stuff. We're actually adopted American citizens through an act of Congress. The 5 Civilized Tribes American Citizenship Act of 1901. And the crazy thing about an act of Congress is that it could be amended or rescinded or changed, whatever, at any point in history. They can actually change that and say, oh, well, the Cherokees are no longer American because our citizenship is based on an act of Congress, not based on birth. We've long forgot that because we don't consider it today, you know? So I don't want to keep rambling on that.
Well, I'm curious, I mean, that makes me think, so can any of us who are not become members of the Muskogee
Well, we're back to
Nation?
the constitutions that sets the requirements for citizenship in the tribes. There's just like the U.S. has laws that regulate American citizenship. The tribe or nations have laws that regulate their nationalities, their citizenships. And in the Creek Nation, for example, you have to be descended from a class of people on the Dawes Rolls called the By Blood people. That was between 1898 and 1906. And if your ancestors, it's like this, found on that roll, then yeah, and you can prove that that person is your direct ancestor, not an uncle or auntie or cousin or anything, but your direct auntie, then you apply for citizenship, and citizenship is usually granted. And it's the same way with the other 4 of the 5 tribes. It's just like that. Except there's been a change in the Cherokee and the Seminole Nation. They take both classifications of people on the Dawes Rolls, whether they're by blood or freedmen. So it's you know, another thing about the treaty, the Creek Treaty of June 14, 1866, is that there's a clause in Article 2 that allows the Creeks, if they want to adopt anybody they want to as tribal members. It doesn't have to be somebody on the Dawes Rolls. They can legally adopt all, 700,000 people that are living in the Tulsa area within their jurisdiction. They can do that because the treaty says that, but we are exclusive and we don't think in those numbers or those thoughts. But we have a legal avenue to actually do that. It's written into our treaty law. Treaties are the first law of the land. We've got to remember that. And our Constitution has to be based on what's the limits of that treaty. For example, our reservation area is established in Article 3 of the 1866 treaty. We used to own the area that's now Oklahoma City, all the way up to Woodward, Oklahoma, up to the Oklahoma Panhandle, almost. Cherokees used to go all the way over there. The Choctaws, which was a huge tribe in the Chickasaw Nation, they lost their lands that became part of Oklahoma Territory, the western part of the state. Now, we can't create laws today that say, that's our domain, that's our land now, our back, or land back in Mississippi or Alabama or Georgia, Tennessee or Florida. We can't just claim that because the treaties prevent us from doing it. We literally have to go to Congress or the president, say, hey, we want to amend this treaty. And the Creeks want Georgia and Alabama back. What are you going to do about it? You know, but because the treaty limits where we're located and why we're located here, we're stuck here. You know.
So can you talk, maybe not everybody knows about the freedmen descendants, that the 5 civilized
Yeah.
tribes had slaves and came here with slaves, and how their
Enslaved
status.
people, yeah.
Enslaved people.
Yeah, the 5 tribes are not known, one, that they were civilized because they enslaved black folk, okay? There's nothing civilized about slaving anybody. The word civilized came from an Indian agent in the 1870s who was coining that phrase in his letters to Congress, and it ended up being stuck in congressional bills and on and on and on. Mainly because our governments look like the US government, you know, the executive branch, the legislative branch, the judicial branch, we had those things. And so they were started to be called civilized, not because they had churches, but because of their governments. So prior to the Civil War, and this is something that, how many of you guys know about Juneteenth? June 1865. But how many of you guys know about June 14th, 1866? Or April 28, 1866? Or March 21st, 1866? Or July 19th, 1866? Those are the actual dates of freedom for black people in Indian Territory. The Choctaw and Chickasaws ended slavery April 28, 1866, long after June 19, 1865. The Creeks, the Seminoles, ended it March 21st, 1866. They ended slavery in their nation and made their enslaved people citizens of their nation. The Creeks was June 14, 1866, 11 months after what happened, well, a year after what happened in June 19, 1865 in Galveston, Texas. The Cherokees were the last to emancipate their enslaved people, and that was July 19, 1866. So enslavement went on a whole nother year beyond what happened in the US. And unlike the president ordering the Emancipation Proclamation and all that stuff, it didn't affect Indian Territory because we were a separate foreign governments that had our own slave codes. And so, you know, it had no effect. It had to be treaty signed. The 5 tribes allied with the Confederate South to protect their sovereign right. If you want to ask me about sovereignty, sovereign right to enslave black people. They lost the war, and as a condition of surrender, they lost the western part of their territories, which is now Oklahoma Territory. They had to end slavery, period, unless it was in form of imprisonment. Somebody committed a crime and you got placed in jail and they made you work the yard or work the farm or whatever. That was legal. And they had an equal interest in the soil and the national funds. I mean, I oftentimes hear in Tulsa, oh, the Perrymans had 200,000 acres and all this stuff like that. And Tulsa kind of came from all of that. And those of us who know a little tribal history would know that that's not true. Because the way our tribal laws were. Any land that's in the Creek Nation was owned by the Creek Nation, not by individuals. Any land in the Choctaw Nation was owned by the Choctaw Nation, not Choctaw individuals. This is before the allotments. But what our tribes allowed was a 2-year lease to the Perryman family on their 50 to 200,000 acres, whatever they claimed, but they didn't own it. And every 2 years, they had to renew that lease with the House of Kings or House of Warriors or whatever, and go to the principal chief and have it signed off. But they didn't physically own it. It's actually, we get into, well, why did the Indians ally with the Confederate South? You know, and what's the difference between slavery, the institution of slavery, in Indian Territory compared to what went on in the Deep South. Where originally, we are the people of the Deep South. Let's get that straight. The Creeks are from Alabama, Georgia area, and the panhandle of Florida, you know, where slavery was. So was the Choctaws and the Chickasaws and the Cherokees and the Seminoles. So when the Trail of Tears, we often talk about the awful stuff that happened to the tribal members, but slaves were moved too, those that were not sold off to the new white plantation owners. They brought their enslaved people here to rebuild their plantations, you know. But what was the difference in slavery here than in Louisiana? The Louisiana slave owner may own 5,000 acres of cotton land or sugarcane and 500 enslaved people. He could go to New York and borrow money from Chase Bank and put the land up for collateral or the people up for collateral. In Indian Territory with the 5 tribes, the slaver didn't own the land. He only owned the enslaved African. That was his wealth. So literally at the end of the Civil War in the Creek Nation, June 14, 1866, if you were a slaver, the Graysons, my ancestors were, they had to end slavery, follow the treaty. They became penniless, basically. They lost the value. Their value was based on the person that they enslaved. In Louisiana, the slavers still had the 5,000 acres. That's some of the differences in it. Anyway, they were, the freedmen were, you know, Mississippi had freedmen. Tennessee had freedmen. I grew up partly in Mississippi as a child, and I remember, and I'm in my 60s now, I remember as a kid seeing older buildings built that had this little marker in it that would say the Freedmen Bureau. And I forgot, as a kid, I just never put it together. Just like we have the BIA, the Bureau of Indian Affairs, there was the Bureau of Freedmen Affairs that regulated the people who were enslaved in the states of Mississippi, Tennessee, Georgia. Even California had an office of Freedmen Affairs there, the Bureau of Freedmen Affairs located there. All those places closed in the 1930s as those people started to die. And so what we end up with are freedmen descendants. And it's unfortunate that only in Oklahoma, in the eastern part of the state with the 5 tribes, that we still use an antiquated word, freedman. It's old school. Why are we making people who are descendants of slaves wear a badge of slavery, basically, to remind them that they're actually descendants of slaves? But the 5 tribes are doing that, and it's not right. It's something that we have to put into our conscience that, like the chief of the Cherokee Nation, Chuck Hoskins says, a Cherokee is a Cherokee is a Cherokee. We got to get rid of those old words to make people feel like they're a part of it equally, that they have an equal share in their nation, you know. So anyway, I can go on.
Yeah, I know you can, and I hope you will come back and continue to talk about this. What is something that you feel like we should know about? You know, here we are, our congregation that we love is on the Muskogee Creek Reservation land. We want to understand and be good citizens and neighbors and all that kind of thing. So what's something that you want to make sure we take away with us?
You know, when the McGirt decision came out, originally it was called the Murphy decision, and when it came out, Governor Stitt and cronies of his and other people put this lie out, basically this propaganda out, particularly in the rural areas, that the Creeks are going to tax your ranches and tax your farms and any land that you had. We were going to come back and tax you, you know. And it was the same thing that hit Tulsa. Oh, all of a sudden, you're going to be taxed by the Creek Nation, or the Cherokees are going to tax you, or the Choctaws are going to tax you, all this stuff, which was not true. You know, and people were scared because they didn't understand the basis of tribal civics. They're limited, when we talk about sovereignty, what we leave out is limited sovereignty. Sovereignty for the tribes is what a court says, or what Congress says, or what a president tries to get away with. The U.S. is the same way. The U.S. is restricted to its sovereignty. You know, it can't, at this point, we're after the election, there's nothing in the U.S. Constitution that says the Republicans can now gather up all the Democrats and put them in concentration camps. They're limited to what they can do. Well, the tribes too, there's a limit to what you can go, what you can actually do. But more importantly, what I try to get not just Okies to understand, but tribal members to understand the real meaning of sovereignty, which is self-governance and stuff like that. But when your food is not grown in your backyard, you don't hunt it, none of that. You go hunt in Walmart. You go to the meat section and you do all your hunting there. You go to the vegetable section and you're gardening right there. And all that food is sourced out from Mexico, China, all these different places, including water at this point, and brought here. And you're depending on others to provide the basic thing that human beings need. You're not that sovereign. Food sovereignty, well, we think about sovereignty from the tribal perspective. We're talking about it from a business type of attitude. We could put a casino where we want to put our casinos. You know, stuff like that. Are we gonna, if our tribal members are misbehaving, they go through our tribal court system, stuff like that. But the real meaning of sovereignty is self-reliant. Are you growing your own food? Are you growing your own vegetables? Your tribal members, what percentage of your tribal members are producing their own food or their own clothes? You see what I'm saying? Because we learned in the pandemic how a tomato went from being 50 cents to $10 because the tomatoes were from Mexico. You know, those are the important things, not just tribal members, but Okies got to understand. We got to wake up and get out of this ideal of corporations taking care of us when things can change in a heartbeat. You know, so when I talk about sovereignty, I always take it to the next level, which is your own, taking care of yourself, raising your own food. You know, at least when you're buying food, know where it's coming from and how it's made. What's in that can of soup? Is it all salt? You know, stuff like that, you know, so.
I really appreciate everything that you've been bringing to us. And I think, you know, one thing that really stands out to me right now, especially with everything that's going on in our country, you know, this idea of who's a member and who's not, you know, and you talked about that with regard to the nations, the Creek Nation. You know, in Germany, during fascism, they started to divide. You were a real German if you followed Hitler. If you believed in Hitler and the Nazis, you were a real German. Anyone who resisted or rejected it was not considered a German. And so I think that especially now, you brought up that idea of, you know, the Republicans can't just round up the Democrats and put them in camps. However, you know, if it gets to the point where people are saying, well, you have to follow and believe in this particular leader in order to be a real American, we fall into that same kind of thing. It's very dangerous, and it's dangerous in a fascist state, and it's dangerous in a tribal nation.
And that's just it. We sometimes are doing it unconsciously, but we're still doing it me versus them. And I advocate that the Council of the Creek Nation and the chief, and they look at everybody that's living in their reservation as part of the reservation. You know, to treat people right based on that they're living in a reservation. We got to take care of these people. It was like that 100 years ago before statehood. There's some fascinating things that Tulsa is uniquely of. I mean, How many of you guys been to Vernon Church in Greenwood? The church itself, the building, the church, sits within the Cherokee Nation. The lot that they have the prayer wall and the little stuff that they're converting to like a little museum space that's just south of the church, the lot, that's in the Creek Nation. That church is literally on the boundaries of the Cherokee Nation and the Muskogee Creek Nation. How many of you guys know that Edison, Edison Boulevard, Sand Springs area, Edison, and Union Boulevard, that's the intersection of all three tribes. The Osages to the northwest, the Cherokee Nation to the northeast, and everything south of Edison is in the Muskogee Creek Nation. How many of you guys know that Tulsa itself is established by act of Congress, not by the will of a state that didn't exist? It's established by act of Congress called the Town Site Act of 1901, where 653.5 acres were illegally, in violation of the treaties, taken from the Creek Nation, ordered to be platted out. Gus and Dave Patton from Greenwood, Arkansas did it. I think Gus or Dave, one of them became mayor of Tulsa at some point, plotted out. But that same act of Congress said that the first sale of the plot that's within the 653 acres, and that would be Edison, basically, all the way down. I think the cutoff is around 18th Street, which is right here. Everything up in that downtown area. It was to be sold, and the first sale went to the Creek Nation. So this is what happened. It was plotted out in 1902. If anybody want a copy of that map, EliGrayson@hotmail.com, I'm happy to email it to you. It was plotted out in the lots, the first sale, selling for $1, $5. Went to the Creek Nation. Immediately flipped and then sold at market value. That's the beginning of Tulsa. You know, and Congress allowed it. And then the new state happened, and they erased Indians, you know. The Creeks, Choctaw, Chickasaw, Seminoles, and Cherokee people became subjects of the U.S. under the Five Civilized Tribes Citizenship Act of 1901, too. Unlike the Ponca, the other tribes, they had to wait till the 1920s. You know, but in 1901, why? Because the federal government wanted legal jurisdiction over them, and they definitely wanted the state to also be legally over them. How many of you guys knew that at statehood, half the land in Oklahoma, the state, the new state in 1907, was owned by females? Women, millions of acres. This happened as part of the allotment process because all the tribes had to go through it. All of them. Half the population of the Creek Nation was female. Whether they were by blood members or freedmen members, they received half of the land in the Creek Nation reservation. Choctaw, Chickasaw, Seminoles, Cherokees, all these other tribes. Half the lands with females. They had no right to vote in the new state. Guess what? They were Indian or black. They were not white women. They had no right to vote in the new state, but they owned half the state. And nowhere in the U.S. was that concentration of land combined by women that they own. In the new state, only would elect, you can only run if you were white and blah, 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 male, blah, 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 go down the list. And they created state laws to dispossess those women of their lands, and quickly. And they did it. We only own about 2% of the land that we originally owned, you know. So, I was telling the crowd earlier, if you look at this podium, from your view, it's beautiful, right? But when I look at it, there's tape, There's stuff like this. There's this thing down here. I mean, it's all kind of stuff under here. And when you're dealing with tribes, it's just like that. From the outside, there's a nice view, right? Oh, the tribes are doing well. But when you get underneath it, where it's layered, where people are busy working and making a daily life to make everything happen for other people, servicing other people, it gets to look like under this thing, under this podium, you know? So anyway, I encourage you guys. I know a lot of this is useless history, won't affect your life, won't stop you from going to research, all this stuff. However, if you want to know why, or the land you live on, who was allotted to, why did that person lose that allotment? You know, why did the Creek Nation allot in the first place when they didn't want it to happen? They were fine with all the land being owned by the tribal government. And if they wanted to use some of it, they just get a 2-year lease on it and don't have to worry about paying taxes on it or anything like that. You know, but the allotments were forced, statehood came about. We are here where we are. And I encourage you, if you are a tribal member and you don't fit the typical Indian, maybe your eyes are blue, maybe your hair is blonde, maybe you are a Fred Flintstone, like our governor, who's a Cherokee citizen. He's a Cherokee citizen, Cherokee national, yeah. But you have an equal say, an equal right to participate, not based on your race or your religion or anything. It's based on the fact that you meet the constitutional requirement, which is the basis of their laws in that particular tribe. And get involved. Don't say, well, I'm not enough Indian, my black woman isn't. Don't get suckered into that or distracted into that. Get involved, you know, particularly if you are a parent of children who are enrolled in the tribe. You need to get involved to protect your children's rights within the tribes. So,
Hey, thank you so much. We're going to have you back because it's just been wonderful to have that. Yes, let's hear it. Now I'd like to invite Michael Lohman to come back up. He has a special dance. Now, I mentioned earlier that Michael is a member of the Choctaw tribe, and yet he studied with the Hopi tribe and learned some of the dances and culture, and they gave him the permission to share the Eagle dance from the Hopi tribe, which he's going to share with us now. He told me that it's a very spiritual dance, and there was a belief that anybody who saw this dance would be blessed. And also that the belief in the Hopi, you know, they're different birds and different tribes, but in the Hopi tribe, they believed the eagle was the one that flew the highest and therefore was touched by the Creator. And so here we have the Eagle dance.
Hey,
Yes, yes, yes. Michael Oman, simply beautiful. Thank you for sharing your ministry with us. And Eli, Grayson, and wow, I've learned something. Every time he opened his mouth about to learn something new. And I can't wait to have more conversation with you. Thank you, Marlon, for that dialogue. Wow. Well, it's one of our traditions to give away our plate to an organization that's doing the work of justice and love in our community. We do this as a practice of living our values of love and service. Now, this week's offering is going to the John Hope Franklin Center for Reconciliation. Now, the John Hope Franklin Center for Reconciliation's mission is to transform the bitterness and mistrust caused by years of racial division, even violence, into a hopeful future of reconciliation and cooperation for Tulsa and the nation. What a worthy cause. Now, to help our financial team ensure that your generosity reaches the right destination, we ask that you please mark your check or envelope with offering. And if you are making a pledge payment to the church, please mark your envelope or check church. And we're thankful for your continued support and dedication. Now, if you're ready to join as a member of All Souls or want more information about membership, please join us today in room 203. That's at 12:30 today in room 203. 12:30, room 203. Folks who are new or newish to All Souls are invited to the Sonnen Library immediately after the service, and the library is right behind the welcome table in the foyer. You're invited there for some light refreshments and a chance to connect with our Welcoming Souls team. And we look forward to meeting you. Now, our devoted members and volunteers are eager to answer any questions you may have about All Souls, our history, our programs, and much more. Now, before you leave today, and I know you saw it when you came in, you probably didn't find a parking space when you came in, right? We're working on that. But we're having our All Souls Fall Art Market in Emerson Halls. It's going on until 2 p.m. today. Now, this will support a great cause because 10% of the proceeds will go to our youth program. So don't miss this one of a kind of gifts that you might be able to. Christmas is coming up, so do your shopping early. Now, there will be a bylaws revision town hall on Tuesday, November 19th at 7 p.m. Now, this session provides an opportunity for All Souls members to review the proposed bylaw revisions. Come and share your thoughts and input. Now, members are also welcome to join us online. And then on Sunday, November 24th, join us for our special service celebrating gratitude and giving. It is our All Souls Thanksgiving Festival. Now, we will only be having one service at 10:30, so please mark your calendars. Now, you and your children are invited to bring fresh fruit or vegetables to add to our chancel table, and all your food donations will go to our community resource bank and also to support families in need. Now, and for more information on these events and upcoming activities, please check your order of service. We'll now receive your most generous offering for John Hope Franklin Center for Reconciliation. Thank you.
Thank you. Rick Fortner, everybody. Let's give him a round of applause. I want to thank once again our special guests. What a great treat to have you all with us today. I'm left really thinking in this moment where our nation is in flux, to hear about the Muskogee Nation and the way that, you know, these questions of who's in and who's out, who belongs and who doesn't. I think it's a really big question right now in our nation as we start, as we start talking about kicking people out and deporting people and putting people in camps. I think it's a very sticky thing when you start to decide who belongs and who doesn't. Is it their religion? Is it their race? Is it where they were born? Is it what papers they have? Is it their name or what they believe or who they follow? I think these are very sticky issues, and we have to be really careful. And I think we have a lot that we could learn both from the inclusiveness and the mistakes of some of the tribal nations that are around us. So as we go forth into the rest of this month, honoring the Native American history that is all around us, let us be inspired by those today who have brought so much light and joy and beauty and wisdom into our lives, and let us find that everywhere we go. May your eyes see beauty, may your lips speak truth, may your heart know love, and may your hands do the good works of this world all the days of your life.